Hi, nice to see you, and hopefully have you see me, and even better, maybe even hear me. These are things I usually like to blame on Ken. I haven't figured out how to do that yet, but give me some time. Maybe by the end of the show, I'll have something put together as far as the technical difficulties go. But hopefully, you are hearing me now. Third time is the charm, as everyone was saying out there. Mitchell Cunningham is saying that he can't hear me. If you're messing with me, Mitchell, Ken, give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Mitchell, do not let me find you because that is not funny at this stage of the game here right now. Anyways, this is the Kenny and Renny post-game show after I'm Ken. Oh, well, I should introduce myself because none of you probably know who I am other than the guy who was just miming a podcast, which is an idea I've been batting around for a while. You're the test market. My name's Sean Reynolds with Sportsnet. I'm about to be joined by Kenny Weeb from the Winnipeg Free Press. Together we are Kenny and Renny, and this is the Kenny and Renny post-game show after the Winnipeg Jets game against the Chicago Blackhawks. I am going to probably not talk much about how much I love this game. Not a big fan of this game. Now, I want to make clear before I do talk about this game, and I talk about, the reason why I think it's important for me to kind of say I think the Jets need a little bit of a wake-up call in this situation is just the simple fact that we should probably point out the Jets have won 5 of their last 6 games. Okay, I don't want to get crazy here because while the Jets are winning games, climbing the standings, they now have the best points percentage in the Western Conference. Other teams that are supposed to be in this same boat are falling apart. The Colorado Avalanche have not played very good hockey as of late. The Dallas Stars squandered a pretty big lead they had on the Winnipeg Jets not long ago. The Vancouver Canucks, the Winnipeg Jets look like you know how I said last podcast that the Jets took the Minnesota Wild and broke their backs over their knee like Bane did Batman? Well, maybe the Jets did the same thing with the Vancouver Canucks because they've been in a downward spiral, can't seem to get out of it. So the Jets are climbing. The Jets are producing at this stage. The only reason I bring this up, because I don't want to be a Debbie Downer. Well, sometimes it's good to be a Debbie Downer. Sometimes one of us has to speak the truth instead of everyone just saying all the hopeful stuff out there. But I say it like this. Before the Jets went on that 5-game losing streak, they went on a tear, and they were in the middle of a tear when they were playing, if I remember correctly, they had 11 games, and 7 of those games were against 6 of the bottom teams in the NHL. And I'd said at that time, if they play like that, if they keep playing like they are, yeah, they're winning. But if they keep playing the way they are, when they start to play contending teams, it's not going to go well. And right after that happened, as soon as they started playing contending teams, they lost twice to the Maple Leafs. They lost once to the Philadelphia Flyers. They lost once to the Pittsburgh Penguins, lost to the Boston Bruins. So we're kind of in that stretch here again. 5 of their last 6 games have been played against teams below the playoff line. And I won't say it's happening every game. I thought the last game against the Minnesota Wild was when the Wild come in hot. Yeah, they're below the playoff line, but they're not. They knocked off the Edmonton Oilers here tonight 4-2. So that's no doubt a legit win. I just think tonight, a game like this against the Chicago Blackhawks, the Winnipeg Jets get by because of a single-handed effort by Nik Ehlers on 2 goals, because of a blessed by the gods redirection on the game winner by Kyle Connor, because the Chicago Blackhawks somehow find a way to miss a wide open net. This is a Chicago Blackhawks team that I think has gone 1-9-1 in its last 11 games, and the Jets found a way to squeak by them. They did that against the Chicago Blackhawks last time before the bottom fell out. I'm not saying the bottom is falling out, but what I am saying is this kind of hockey that you see the Jets win with here tonight, I don't think is anything to celebrate. They got by, they got points. This is maybe a game that the Chicago Blackhawks deserve more than they got here in this situation. I think I've seen enough, and I've said this before, I've seen enough for the Winnipeg Jets. I don't think the bottom is falling out on them. I don't really think there's time for the bottom to fall out on them again. But what we saw from the Jets after that 5-game losing streak is we talked about like the building blocks of them getting back towards what we saw from them before Christmas. That team that in the heart of a really tough schedule, right? Like here they are making hay against teams below the playoff line. But let's give the Jets credit. Before Christmas, they were going through and they were just running one after another of the teams that were over the playoff line. They went through the Colorado Avalanche a couple times. They knocked off the Detroit Red Wings when they came to town. They hung one on the Boston Bruins that night. So I guess what I'm saying is what I'm looking for from the Winnipeg Jets right now is a team that shows the building blocks that they've been showing over the last little while. Get the power play going, get a little bit more effort. That game that they had against the Sharks, don't really allow them to play with the puck that much. Hold on to the puck. Don't allow them to shoot. All the things. To me, this is a step back, right? And it's okay because everyone else seems to be taking a step back right now. The Vegas Golden Knights lost 7-0 or whatever it was. After their long streak, the Edmonton Oilers have cooled down. Like I said, the Vancouver Canucks look like they're broken right now. On the other side of things, the Boston Bruins look like they're kind of having some struggles. Colorado is fallen and they can't really get up. The Dallas Stars, same thing. So the Jets are doing what a lot of other great teams aren't doing, and that's racking up points. So got to give them credit for that. But I'll say this. I'm looking for a Winnipeg Jets team to build their way back up to the kind of hockey we saw them play before Christmas. I take a look at this game, and I think it's a step back. You know how I feel about the found a way crowd and the, it's just one win, or never complain about a win and all that kind of stuff. If you haven't been paying attention, I complain about a lot of wins. Tonight will be another one of those nights. That's how Renny does it, whether you like it or not. But Ken, he may do it a different way. And the only way we're going to find out how he's going to do it is if we bring him into the show. And you bring him into the show, ladies and gentlemen, by playing the best music in the business. So that's what I'm going to do right now, everybody. Here comes Kenny. Kenny, I couldn't bring it up at our lunch the other day that we had with Frank from Vittorio Rossi. I couldn't bear to bring up how he feels about us looking the way that we look right now on the podcast. Sometimes I didn't have the courage to do it, or my mouth was just too full of all the great food that we were having over at Frankie's, or our main man, Joe. Loves to host us and does such a good job of it. I had a great lunch. Great to see Frankie. I think he's a forgiving guy in nature. So he'll get past what we look like right now. But boy, oh boy, he's probably somewhere stabbing himself under the table with a fork right now. But hey, if you want to impress when you dress, not like Ken and I are doing right now, head on down to Vittorio Rossi on Corden Avenue. Walk in, loudly proclaim Kenny and Renny sent you. Ask for Frankie and the boys, and they will do you up right. Kenny, what did you think of that one tonight?
Yeah, I don't have quite as dour a feeling as you did. I mean, I didn't really think the Jets were ever really in danger of losing the hockey game. Do I think that they were their sharpest? No, absolutely not. But I didn't see as many of the leaky plays. Were there a couple of puck management issues? Yes. I don't really feel as though they were really playing as badly as they did maybe against Calgary. And again, I'm not trying to lower the bar here. I mean, this was not a template game for the Winnipeg Jets, but I think what I saw was that they got quite frustrated by Peter Mrazek, everyone not named Nik Ehlers in that regard. They had the game was pretty much under control prior to, Logan Stanley making a play that I wouldn't call it a desperation play, Sean, but I think that in that scenario, like, does it make sense that he tried to shoot the puck at the net? Yes. But on a spinorama play, that puck's got to get deep. If you don't have a lane to the net, and again, I understand that the leash is short right now for Logan Stanley, Sean, but if you were in that position, you can't afford for that puck to be turned over where it was, blindly firing it. If it is fired, it has to be through. It wasn't. It was stopped. And then not only do you turn the puck over, Colin Blackwell, now is he cheating? Yes. But when there's nothing at stake, a player can cheat behind when he sees that kind of a play being made. Colin Blackwell gets behind Dylan Sandberg and Logan Stanley and scores. And now all of a sudden it's a 1-goal game, and the Jets are thinking, man, they had all these opportunities to make it 3-0 or 3-1, and Mrazek stood tall and look out. And all of a sudden, the Hawks pull their goalie and the puck squirts to Tyler Johnson on the back door with 42.8 seconds left, and it's a tie game. So I get it. The Jets gave up a point to the Chicago Blackhawks, but they finished the season series 3-0-1 against them. Connor Bedard was a complete non-factor in the game, Sean, which is not easy to do, and it hasn't been for the Jets to do. So Jason Dickinson, did he miss a wide open net? I don't know if Connor Hellebuyck got a piece of it, if it hit the post or what.
I don't think he did. I don't think he did.
You think it just hit the post?
I think it went off the crossbar. I don't know. I don't know why it was so hard to see that. I don't think there's any evidence that.
I don't think it hit him, but
he got there, right? He made him go up
for sure,
top, right?
He gave him nothing else.
You miss because it's not a tap-in. Like, he creates a scenario where it's not a tap-in. So give Connor Hellebuyck all the credit in the world. Like that if he doesn't fight his way through that, it's in the back of the net for sure, no doubt.
Yeah. So I mean, for me, were the Jets bad? No. Do I think that they're were operating at full capacity? No, but I mean, if Gabriel Velarde on the back end, if he's not robbed by Mrazek, is this, does a game go from 3-0 to 5-0? I don't know. I don't think it was a terrible game by the Jets by any stretch. I don't think it was their crispest, but we're going to see games like this during this time. 20 games in 37 days. There are teams like Chicago.
We've seen a lot of these games.
Yeah, I mean, they got to clean things up. No, I just don't feel like they were that loose in their defensive zone. I didn't see the same type of issues. So to me, more of a nothing burger. But yeah, I mean, if you want the things are going to get harder for the Jets. They're going to play the Coyotes on Sunday, Sean. The Coyotes have lost 11 consecutive games, 10-1. So I don't think it's a motivation issue. I mean, that was an issue. That was a subject that was prevalent on Thursday, both with Rick Bowness and several players. I don't think that these guys are lacking motivation, but I do think that, they have another level they can reach. And I would say this, Sean, it's much more important for the Jets to be playing at their absolute peak in the middle of March and in April as they get ready for the playoffs. These games are going to happen. As you talked about, Sean, Vancouver had been the last NHL team that had not lost 3 in a row. Well, suddenly they've lost 4 in a row. And, at 11:32 on a Friday night after a 7:30 puck drop, if I had told you on October 1st that the Jets would be first in the West in points percentage on February 23rd, I would say there's not a ton to complain about for the fan base. Now, our job is to break down every game and look at the bigger picture, and that's what we're going to do today. So, Josh Morrissey, there's Waiter. Yep, 3 assists for Josh Morrissey. He was exceptional. We've been talking for the last 2.5 weeks, Sean. When is Nik Ehlers going to get himself going? So the fact that he got himself going is a big breakthrough. It's a big development. He was absolutely flying today. Rick Bowness told us that he's been dealing with the nagging injury. He didn't look like a guy with a nagging injury today. He was excellent and delivered in the way that he needs to deliver for the Jets to be successful. So that is an important development. What did I think about the top line during the game? I thought that
let's break those things up. Hold on. Let's not just go and just barely touch on anything. Let's dig into stuff. I will say this before we do go in that direction. The reason why we talk about this, the reason why we say this is because the Winnipeg Jets, and the reason why I go down this road, maybe I should explain myself a little more and not put words in your mouth. The reason why I go down this road is because the Winnipeg Jets have showed in the past that they're a team that takes the foot off the pedal and then doesn't find the pedal again. Okay, it's the only reason I say this, the only reason I bring it up, because I said this, I coached this at the beginning of this, like they've won 5 of their last 6 games. So it's hard to complain about that. And while they're doing this, I mentioned all the Dallas, Vancouver, Colorado, Vegas. There's a whole bunch of teams that are really struggling right now and finding ways to lose games, where the Winnipeg Jets are finding ways to win games. But here's the deal. If I'm an analyst and with this Kenny and Renny show is for the Vegas Golden Knights and we're doing this, I'm going to sit there and I'm going to say, I'm not at all worried about this kind of stuff, because what I know from the Vegas Golden Knights is they go through these little sleepy stretches and then they turn things on, other than 2 years ago where they kind of, they fell and they just couldn't get up. But for the most part, they've showed me that they're a team that when it comes down to it and when it comes playoff time, they know how to find their game and turn it on. Same thing with a team like the Dallas Stars. You see them last year. They find the best version of themselves and they're used to doing that. And they've been doing that, Ken, basically since 2019. We've been seeing that team going out and for the most part finding a way to win, playing above themselves in the playoffs. We haven't seen that from the Winnipeg Jets. The Jets have been the team that at certain points of the year looks like they are unbeatable, gets everybody excited about their potential, and then drops it off a little bit. Now, I agree with you 100%. And the reason I don't think, and I've always thought that the trap door is not going to go out underneath the Winnipeg Jets, is because, like you said, their structure is still intact tonight, and that gives them a chance to win every game. I don't like the effort level from a team that in years past, their effort level has absolutely dried up and they haven't been able to find it again. Now, I also know that it's an 82-game season, and I don't think it makes a lot of sense for the Jets to keep the pedal to the metal through the entire time. I'm just saying it has now been probably, what are we looking at, 6-7 weeks since we've seen the Winnipeg Jets look like they can look, right? So we've seen the Vegas Golden Knights turn it on against the Edmonton Oilers. We've seen the Edmonton Oilers do what they need to do. We've seen the Boston Bruins flash that. I really don't feel, unless we're counting that Vancouver game, I really don't feel like we've seen the Winnipeg Jets say, okay, that's it. Tonight we're going to go and we're going to be the Winnipeg Jets. And so that's my concern. They're so good that they find ways to win a lot. I just take a look at this team, and you have to be concerned with them because it's in their DNA from years past that they take the foot off the gas pedal and they never find it again. So it's the only reason I say this. If this is another team that's shown they know how to turn it on, then I just look at this as another night where the Jets got points and they know what to do. And there's going to come a time in the season where they're going to ramp up in their game and they're going to go. I think, Ken, that's going to happen with the Jets this year, but I think you're crazy if you don't take a look at what the Winnipeg Jets did last year and the year before, and in the Canadian division where they lost 7 straight games right before they went into the playoffs, and in the 2019 year, the year they were probably hands down the best team in the NHL. They started out the first half of the year great and then kind of fell apart afterwards. This team has done that too many times for me not to show a level of concern on nights when they're not putting in the effort they should and still pulling out victories like they did tonight.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's a show me year for the Winnipeg Jets, but I mean, they've been showing a lot to this point. I would say we have to count the Canucks game. It was the last time they had a real showdown with the team, right? I mean, it's with the first place team in the division. They were challenged after a poor effort against the Calgary Flames, and yes, they had a at times suspect middle period against the Minnesota Wild, but they clamped it down in the third and gave up almost nothing. I would also say that, yes, the core group has stayed the same, but Sean, one of the reasons why the Jets are a different team is very simple. Look at the new players that they brought in. Velarde, Iafallo, Monahan, these are all two-way players. Nemesnikov, full season. Now Nino Niederreiter, full season.
Yeah.
Even Morgan Barron, Sean. I mean, they've completely changed the complexion and the construction of the roster.
Hey, Julie Sue's all with you. She says different teams, different seasons, different coaches. I think she copied and pasted this from a podcast that we did last year around this time.
Well, I mean, they have to show it when it counts, but I mean,
Exactly.
Yes,
And that's
Barron
all I'm
was
saying.
here, but
That's all
I
I'm saying.
mean,
I think they're going to get there. And I don't think we need to dwell on this too much longer. I do think they're going to get there, but there's that nagging feeling. It's the same thing that had Jets fans when they went on that 5-game streak thinking, oh, here we go again, because they've gone that way time and time again. So listen.
sure, but they're not abandoning their like the difference
No,
is that
yeah,
they're not
I
abandoning the
agree.
structure. So I would say it's a little bit different. I mean, there's things we can dig into the game. I thought before the goal, Kyle had a very nondescript game until he scored the game winner.
Agreed.
But that's what he
Agreed.
does. It's his sixth.
Yes.
You know, it's his sixth game winner of the season. So I mean, I understand people are disappointed. He needs to get himself going. I haven't found him to be as dangerous during this stretch of time. But then again, there it is. When the game's on the line, he delivered. I mean, yes, of course it's a lucky goal, but guess what? He still got to the net, and that play doesn't happen without Josh Morrissey, who was fantastic today with the three helpers. Do I think the top line is playing at its best? No, but Gabriel Velarde, great scoring chance. I would say, that line needs to elevate. Mark Scheifele had probably his best game of the year on Saturday night against Vancouver.
Yeah.
I think it's 3 games without a point now.
Nondescript was
at
a
least
good way of describing it.
At least he was involved. I mean, physically, he was in the middle of some things, but again, I'm not sitting here with rose-colored glasses, but in a game where the Jets were playing against a young phenom, they took away the best player on the opposition today. So in a game they weren't their best, what do you have to do in that game? You have to eliminate Connor Bedard, and that's exactly what they did. Right? 1 shot on net today for Bedard, who had scored 3 times in 3 previous games against them. So, I mean, I understand that there is cause for concern, and there have to be things on the radar. Rick Bowness said it himself. He's not going to let things go to the point where it gets to be to the point where they can't pull back the reins on them. So, yeah, I would say that the structural part is a big part of it. Right now, it's obvious that the Jets have a little bit of disruption within their top 6. Or not disruption, they're trying to find a second line that works. And let's dig into that a little bit more away here.
Yes.
The top line was getting most of its production on the power play. Today it's on 3-on-3, but they're still delivering. That's 8 points for Kyle Connor in 4 games. Are there parts of his game he can get better at? Absolutely. But he's still producing. So same with Velarde, 8 points in 4 games. So I would say that there's still some production there.
Hey, I want you to give Sweet Lou a shout out before we move on.
Sure. For folks who have realty needs they would like to have met, contact our main man, Lou Ferlin, at Real LePage Dynamic Realty, 204-791-9971, or at the office, 204-989-5000. His email is lou@louferlin.ca. That's LOU@LOUFURLAN.ca. Lou Ferlin, excellent realtor, excellent human being, and excellent supporter of the community, including this podcast.
Okay, I just want to say something quick before I move on. I love this from Julie Sue, who comes at me and she says, Renny, you just complained, period. Julie, I've got your frozen pizzas. You got to find a way who we're going to hand it out to someone on the show. Julie Sue bought a couple of frozen pizzas for my daughter's frozen pizza drive that got her
done,
to
Julie
Edmonton.
Sue. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Julie Sue. She'd like to hand out a couple of those pizzas. We're going to have to figure out a way to do that. Very generous of her. Speaking of generosity, I'm going to give the Pristine Roofing wake-up call to each and every one of you out there, not in a negative way. I need your attention. Perk up. Pristine Roofing wake-up call, because I've got an important announcement. Pristine Roofing and Siding would like you to get a hold of them. And you know how you do that? Well, of course, what you do is you get a hold of our main man, North End Rick, at 1-204-981-6289. He's the guy who will come down and tell you any of the roofing, siding, exterior needs that you need. You can also get a hold of Pristine Roofing at 1-204-237-7663. But Ken, I haven't even told you about this. You're finding out about it at the same time as everybody else. Pristine Roofing is going to hand out a free roof to a deserving person out there. What they want to do is they want to find somebody out there who's in a place where they could use a new roof, they could use a bit of a break. They may not be able to afford to do it. And what they would like from you, the Kenny and Renny audience, is to get a hold of North End Rick, get a hold of Pristine Roofing. And if there's someone in your life, if it's a grandparent, if it's a parent, if it's a relative, if it's the neighbor down the street, if it's a friend, if it's any of those things, if it's a stranger that you barely know, but you go by their house and you see them working in their garden, you see that their roof's in a bad place, in a bad spot, they want you, Pristine Roofing, to get a hold of them, get a hold of North End Rick, let them know the person you think could use this break that Pristine Roofing is so generously wanting to hand out. And that is the Pristine Roofing wake-up call to all of you. If you know someone in your life or kind of semi-attached to your life that could use a break, that could use a new roof, that's what Pristine Roofing is doing. And it's just one of these moments, Ken. We've talked about this in the past. We've talked about it. We're actually kind of snobby, you especially, but we're a little bit snobby when it comes to our sponsors, because we like to make sure we take pride in trying to represent our sponsors properly, but we want to make sure that our sponsors are the kind of folks that represent themselves properly. And this is just one of those moments where I feel absolutely so proud to be associated with an organization like Pristine Roofing. So that's the wake-up call for all of you out there, folks. You saw the numbers. Get busy, get out there and go out there and try and get someone a free roof, people. Let's get into the flip-flop first, Ken. Let's go to that. The Perfetti Iafallo flip-flop. I had a long conversation with Nick Lynham and Alyssa Hood about Cole Perfetti. They are staunch Cole Perfetti defenders. I don't think I'm a Cole Perfetti attacker. I think I'm just a realist. And I think when you've got a head coach that was talking about their top six and it was kind of unworkable because they couldn't move this guy here because it meant Cole Perfetti would have to go there and they didn't like him being there. The thing that I thought was problematic with Cole Perfetti is if he doesn't fit on the second line, I don't know where he fits. And we all know about the third line and the feeling that it's going to be hard. At this stage, we know it's going to be hard to break that line up. And I don't know that the effectiveness of that line is not severely affected by moving Cole Perfetti there. I'll be honest with you, I hadn't really seen the Cole Perfetti dropping down to the fourth line coming. What did you take away from that move? Give me a take. Let's start with the fourth line and how you thought Cole Perfetti did in that spot.
Yeah, quite honestly, Sean, I actually liked Cole Perfetti's game today. I mean, obviously not a ton of ice time, just over 10 minutes. I thought that he was really clicking with Vladislav Nemesnikov and Morgan Barron. I thought they were effective. I thought he was moving his feet a little bit more. That's one of the things that we've noticed right now, Sean. Perfetti we talked about his off-season training and how he looked really, quicker in training camp and at the start of the year. I think that his pace has dipped a bit. And again, because Cole is such a smart player, it's not sometimes as noticeable that his pace is not as a high level. I thought that he was really working on simplifying his game today. I think he only had one shot on net, but actually I thought that Morgan Barron responded incredibly well. And we know this, Rick Bowness told us had nothing to do with his play, that he was pulled out of the lineup the other day for Rasmus Kapari. But still, that's the kind of response you want to see from a player when he is a healthy scratch. So, kudos to Morgan Barron. Vladislav Nemesnikov, another solid effort all around. Rang a shot off the iron early. That line I thought was effective. They didn't play a ton in the third period. Obviously, we know that. But I liked a lot of what I saw from that line. In terms of what it looked like on the second line, I would say that Alex Iafallo did what he was asked to do, Sean. I thought that he was involved on the forecheck. He's a very dependable defensive player, so he fits very well with Sean Monahan on that regard. Not that Nikolai Ehlers is, lacking in that area, but it, wouldn't be at the top of his, skill set. So to me, I thought that line was effective, but I think it's important to not, let's take everything into consideration here. You look up and Nikolai Ehlers has 2 goals and you think, oh, the second line must have been perfect. Well, right. One of those goals was scored on an extra attacker, and the other goal was scored with his line, but it was Nikolai Ehlers essentially going end-to-end and scoring from just above the goal line. So I don't think we can say here that after one game, this is what the second scoring line should look like for the rest of the season. Now, having said that, Alex Iafallo did everything that he is asked to do. We've been talking about Perfetti. Yes, that's now 15 games without a goal. But Alex Iafallo has gone 19 without a goal and has 1 assist during that time. So it's not like they were, replacing a player struggling offensively with a player who has been red hot offensively. It's negligible difference in terms of the production, but you're looking for the fit on that line, Sean. And we've talked about this a ton in the last 4 years. It's not always the 6 most skilled players make up the top 6. That's not always the way it needs to be. And this is another great example. If Alex Iafallo can turn some pucks over, be disruptive, and create some other chances for Ehlers, that's good for the Jets. What I saw today that was also important, Sean, I think that Nikolai Ehlers and Sean Monahan, this to me was one of the first games where they were generating more together and creating chemistry, including the first scoring chance, the 1T for Nikolai Ehlers that was set up beautifully by Sean Monahan's pass. Later on, Iafallo, or was it maybe Ehlers that sprung Iafallo or Monahan for that great chance on the backhand, and he just, I thought he hit the post. It was late in the second period. Mrazek did stretch over, but I think it hit the side of the post. So I liked a lot about that line. Do I think that's the optimal deployment necessarily? We'll see. I would say they should take another spin with that second line and see what happens. Because Alex Iafallo was effective on that line. But the most important part about that line today, Sean, was Monahan and Ehlers starting to read off one another, and Ehlers looking like himself, because for a lot of the time during the 10 games where he went without a goal, he didn't look like himself. And I'm not saying he needs to go end to end and, pass it to himself, cut to the middle, and make a beautiful play. But what I am saying is that he needs to use his speed to push back the defense and be a dominant and dynamic force with regularity. So, and there you go. Mike Harwin. Go back to that. What Iafallo does away from the puck versus what Perfetti does is not negligible. And I didn't say that it was. That's why he's on the line. Perfetti I think he is a better defensive player than he gets credit for. But Alex Iafallo is an elite defensive player. That's why he played on a line with Anze Kopitar. You don't just get handed that job when you're not a high point producer unless you are essentially the human eraser defensively. So I love what he does on the forecheck. I love what he does defensively. But the reason that Cole Perfetti is off the line has nothing to do with his defensive play. It's that his offense is dried up completely.
I agree with you. I've seen enough from that second line that I want to see more, right? But you're right. This is never mind. Like I'm not even talking. It's one of the reasons why I'm not the biggest fan of this game. Like everyone's talking about, if they would have scored the third goal, they would have done this. They're not saying, well, if the Chicago would have scored into the empty net, what would have happened or any of those kind of things. But I mean, this is a night that Nikolai Ehlers goes out with 2 individual efforts, and those are the goals to get the Winnipeg Jets to overtime. So you can't really take away those goals and say, okay, this is a sign that the second line is working. You wanted something to say?
No, I'm just saying thumbs up to Bick Ronas's.
Bick Ronas says Vlad and Perfetti has some chemistry. Yeah, so this was a great point. I wanted to get to that, but we should get to that in just a bit because I thought that was the thing when you moved him down there. It was like, well, we've already been here. We've been with Nemeskov and Perfetti, and that's why that fourth line looks good. Anyway, to go back, there were a couple really nice plays I thought that went down with that second line. There was a couple times there I thought the Iafallo presence there created some defensive work that led to opportunities going the other way. So for me seeing this line for the first time, I never mind the 2 goals, even if you take those 2 goals away. I'm seeing enough that it looks to me like Monahan is now starting to find a chemistry with Nik Ehlers, which is essentially what I think is the most important thing here. Like if you can get Nik Ehlers scoring, he's the kind of guy who can drive the scoring on a second line. So if Monahan becomes that guy who starts finding him, that makes sense. But to your point, the defensive responsibility that exists, and Iafallo, like he was putting points on the board earlier in the season. He's capable of doing that. I want to see more from that line. It wasn't one of these one-offs where I was like, okay, well, we don't need to go there again. And maybe what I like about it is just the fact that I'm finally starting to see Monahan and Ehlers kind of understand where each other are going to be on the ice. So maybe it's that. But this is one of those scenarios. Cole Perfetti got moved down. It looks like they're pretty, I mean, it's pretty hard to get on the first line of this team. We've seen that by the amount of times Ehlers has gone up there and absolutely helped them dominate, and still finds his way getting pushed down. So I don't think there's much of a path for Perfetti to go to the top line. There's no going to the third line for him, because he would ruin the way that line plays and what their true strengths are. So essentially, if we're in a position where the head coach is thinking the way we are, Ken, that listen, I'd like to see a little bit more out of that second line. Cole Perfetti has now found himself on the fourth line and is going to be things are going to go wrong. Either things are going to go wrong with that line and they'll bring him back up to try that out, or he's going to need to do something to fight his way back up top to that line. And I mean, that's where you find yourself, right? As far as the fourth line goes, I did see some play there. Again, the Nemesnikov connection with Perfetti, they've played together already. So basically, what we've found a way to do here is take a second line now and take the Jets' old second line, and the majority of now they make up the majority of the fourth line. So we'll see where that goes. Maybe this line can take advantage of some weaker fourth line competition out there. We'll see in that regard. To me, I felt like this was one of those nights where they had a couple flashes here or there, and maybe it's hard to get into the rhythm that you have to be in when you're playing that little during the evening. But this was one of those nights where I just thought, for the most part, the effort level on the entire Winnipeg Jets squad was down. So seeing what that fourth line is going to look like, I did feel like that was one of the areas where they didn't exactly have the most energy coming off the fourth line, especially from what we've seen from that line before, right? Like when you get Morgan Bering doing what he does, but in some of the times when Gus came out there, when you had Dominic Toninato coming out there, and that line was making differences in games. Clearly, we didn't see that from the fourth line here tonight. But the key to me here is the second line. If the coach keeps wanting to see more of it, then this fourth line is going to be whatever they make of it, and it's going to be having Perfetti on there for a while if they can make something of that second line.
Yeah, I mean, and that's so. Here you go. This is part of growth, Sean. I mean, this is the most games Cole Perfetti has played at the NHL level. He's going through a rough patch offensively. The coach definitely gets your attention when he puts you on the fourth line. But again, this isn't done as a disciplinary measure. We know what Rick Bowness feels about Vladislav Nemesnikov. He doesn't deserve to be on the fourth line. He's not a fourth line player. But he's on the fourth line because the Jets are deep. So you're not throwing him out there with a couple of guys who are barely hanging on in the NHL. Nemesnikov was a capable second-line center. Does he produce the same way as one? No, but he gives you everything he absolutely has. And then you have a guy in Morgan Barron who played almost all of last season on the third line. So it's not like this is a line he won't play. Again, they were over 10 minutes today, and that's important given how much the Jets are going to be playing in the next stretch of time. But if you're Cole Perfetti, you need to get yourself going offensively, however that is, whether that's getting power play touches or just finally finding a way to find the back of the net again. Because it looked like Cole Perfetti was well on his way to a 20-goal season. Now he's going to have to get himself cooking if he wants to hit that mark. So it's part of growth. I mean, will Cole Perfetti like being on a fourth line and being an 11-minute player? No, but that's part of trying to learn at the pro level. I mean, this is on-the-job training, essentially. So if the Jets were struggling, yeah, then you could say something about it. But right now, Cole knows he's got to get himself going. So it's incumbent on him to do so. And playing with guys like Nemesnikov and Barron should help him get going. And I thought he took an important step today. So, what happens with the Lions? I mean, there's lots of time to go here, and there's plenty of time to figure out if the Jets are going to make another move or not. And where that move is going to come from, whether it's middle six, is it's a fourth line guy or whatever. See what happens.
Okay. I just wanted to say, regardless of whether or not, just give me one second here. Regardless of whether or not the switching of the lines resulted directly in the Nikolai Ehlers goals. I don't know. Maybe it's something about it. Maybe it's the defensive responsibility of Alex Iafallo that allowed Nikolai Ehlers to feel like he could open things up and do what he did tonight. But regardless, it really paid off to make that switch. And if you are looking to pay off high interest credit cards or debt, we suggest you go talk to our friends at Cambrian Credit Union about their payoff loan. They can show you how taking out a loan to pay off your debt actually gets you debt free faster, and you can save thousands of dollars. Go to cambrian.mb.ca to book an appointment online. Now, Ken, we got to talk about this. Saw CJ in town, came around the corner. A good buddy of ours was like, "Hey, what are you doing here?" He said he was working on a little something. Well, we saw with a little something that he was working on. For those who missed it, wrote an article, and I don't think many people missed it, but wrote an article in a conversation that he had with Mark Chipman about the attendance issues with the Winnipeg Jets. Ken, your takeaway from this whole situation?
Yeah, I thought that CJ did a good job. I would say that this is obviously, we know it's a hot button topic. I know that a lot of people get their back up, and again, we're not paying customers, so again, I'm not here to tell people how they feel or how they should feel. They're all entitled to their own opinion. What stood out to me, Sean, I thought that a couple things. I thought that there was a lot of accountability shown by Mark Chipman in the article and in the quotes that were given. Most importantly, Sean, we mentioned it when the attendance was down earlier in the year. We mentioned how people feel like they were maybe a little bit neglected or taken for granted. And I think it was quite clear by Mark Chipman saying that for 10 years, they weren't a sales company, they weren't doing a lot of sales, and their customer service was not up to par. So I thought that was a pretty big revelation. And I thought the other part of it, he said, are bad on a couple of other things. So they're listening. The fact that the owner is making calls, I mean, has he called every single former season ticket holder that didn't renew? No, but I think that the Jets and True North are making an effort to do a better job of trying to connect with the fan base. I understand why people get their back up. We know this is a sensitive topic. No one in Manitoba wants, I should say very few people would like the Jets to be departing. But at the same time, we knew that when the Jets came back in 2011, Sean, that when a team says they need to be around 13,000 season tickets and suddenly they're at 9,500, I don't think people should be surprised if Mark Chipman says the status quo is not going to work over the long term. Like, some people are calling it a threat. It's not a threat. It's reality. Mark isn't saying the team is moving imminently. If he's not holding his finger out saying we need you to support us. But the reality is the Jets can't be an NHL team without ownership taking big losses. And I think it's quite evident True North knows they still have strides to make, and they're probably going to be trying to do things to make that work. Where this goes, I'm not sure. I mean, I think it's important to note that although the Jets' attendance is down and they've struggled, they've been playing at 94% capacity. I think I was heard earlier today in the post-Christmas game. So the difference between the Jets at 94% or at a $10,000 attendance rate, that's a massive difference. But again, I think that the whole thing with Gary Bettman coming to town, Gary's not going to be pointing his finger and saying, Joe Fan, you better step up or your team's gone. But I think it's quite clear, and we've talked about this for months now, the corporate support in the community needs to be on the rise in order for the Jets to remain a team that spends to the salary cap ceiling. I understand why people are upset, but this is what I would say to the people that are saying Arizona's playing in front of 4,400 people. That's true, but the Coyotes are also in danger of being relocated. So it's not something to just say, well, the team in our market is drawing way better than Arizona, so leave us alone. Well, no, that's not how it works either. So anyways, I have, like I said, I don't pretend to have myself in the shoes of the single game buyer or a season ticket holder. because we sit in the press box and cover the games. But what I do know from covering hockey since 2000 is that it's an important community, and the NHL is important to the community. So I think that lots of people are going to be taking measures to try and make sure that the Jets remain in Winnipeg, and that Winnipeg and Manitoba remains an NHL town. So, those are my biggest takeaways. What about you?
Well, so I like what you said about the realization. The last time we talked about this, the last time this became a topic of conversation, I said in there, I thought it was incumbent upon the Winnipeg Jets to be having a conversation with its fan base about what went wrong, why people stopped showing up. And that's what I thought the last time that this kind of popped up into the media. That's what I thought was missing from this entire thing. Like, look, you talked about it. We sit in the press box. Other people will go out there and they spend their money, their hard-earned money, over and over and over again. And they did it for a long time. And they did it, as was acknowledged today, basically without much in the way of customer service. People just showed up and they lined up and they handed over their money. And that's what happened, right? So to me, I thought that this needed to be a conversation between this organization, between a business and between its customers, because in the end, that's what this is. Now, sports teams come with loyalty and people get like really invested in the brand. I mean, essentially sports teams are companies with like super ridiculously strong brands to the point that people just go crazy over them. Right. And that's what's happening, in the situation with most of them. But that conversation needed to happen. So what I like hearing about this is that Mark Chipman is at a point where he's willing to say some of the things. I think the majority of us knew that a lot of fans who turned away felt slighted, that they felt like they weren't that they weren't listened to. And you know what? I've got there's a couple ones I wanted to bring up here just because I thought that they were important to take a look at. Andrew McLaren says 6 weeks later, oh gosh, geez, sorry, I can't go in that direction. I messed that one up here. I'll do this one from. I won't do that. I had a couple here from fans who basically had talked about their feelings of how they got a hold at one time. They were going to re-up for season tickets. Was one of these people was saying he was told he had to re-up for 4 years, and he said, I can do one. So you had someone who was willing to be a year-to-year person. He could only sign up for 4, and he was told to, take off, right? Like, these are the stories that you hear time and time again. There's a reason people are staying away. There's a reason people got frustrated. I think it's incumbent upon True North to identify what those reasons are, to go to those fans and say, why did you leave? What did we do wrong? How can we make it better? And what do you need from us going forward? So I feel like this is the start of that conversation. But I read Paul Friesen's article today, and I thought Paul Friesen absolutely nailed it. And one of the things that I thought was going to be weird to bring into the conversation was the idea of how Mark Chipman has handled this news. Twice now with this news, what Mark Chipman has done is he's gone to go get Darren Dreger, and he's brought Darren Dreger in, and he's had a conversation with Darren Dreger. And then now he's done the same thing with CJ, and he brought CJ in and he had a conversation with CJ. Now, you and I are really good friends with CJ. He does phenomenal work. I think he did great work on this. But I'm going to tell you this, and here I'm going to go definitely with a quote that Owen, who is on our show quite often, had with this that I thought made some sense, and it's something that Freezer talked about in his podcast. Owen said, and he tagged the Winnipeg Jets PR and the Jets, if you're trying to sell tickets in Winnipeg, what is the benefit of giving reporter Chris Johnston an owner interview when you have interactive local platforms that understand issues better, like Illegal Curve, Sports Talk Winnipeg, you and I from KNR? This is the strange stuff, he says, that confuses people and shows a lack of connection to a fan base that desperately seeks to connect with the club. Now, Paul brought it up, the same idea. Now, before we go down this is like CJ works for TSN. Darren Dreger works for TSN. Some of you are going to say, look at Renny. He's just out there at sour grapes because he works for Sportsnet and this is TSN. And I'm fine with you saying that. If that's what you want to say out of this situation, fill your boots, go at this situation. What I will say in this situation is, I think, as good a reporter as Chris Johnston is, I don't know that Chris Johnston understands the intricacies of this story, or the connection with fans, or the reason that fans would be upset in this situation, Ken, the way that you would, or I would, or Scott Billick, or Mike McIntyre, go on and on, the illegal curve boys. And I think that the problem with this is fans want to be heard on this issue. And the owner, in trying to have this conversation with fans, is taking that conversation to Toronto and farming out the conversation with people who can't ask the kind of questions that would be representative of the fans who are upset in this situation. And what it turns out being is a one-way conversation. And I think that there's a lot of people who were talking about that on the internet. I thought Paul Friesen did a really good job of bringing it into his article, because I was thinking, well, how are you going to do this? How are you going to be a media person who talks about the idea that this was farmed out elsewhere and not sound like sour grapes? I thought he did a good job with it. Maybe I sound like sour grapes right now. I'm not angling for the guy who breaks that story. What I am angling for is the conversation between the team happening with someone who at least has a very, very extremely strong finger on the pulse of what the fans are upset about in this situation, so there can at least be conversations or representative of the fans in that situation. And that's what I think is the problem with this issue, and how it's been handled twice now, is it gets farmed out to a place. And I get it, there's a relationship between TSN, they own the local rights, and the Winnipeg Jets, so maybe they see it just as, that's the place we go to do this because there's a financial investment by them, and that's the place that we take it. But then John Liu should be doing this story, or Kevin Sawyer should be doing this story, or Dan Robertson should be doing this story. I just think in this situation, when you keep taking and having this conversation at the national level, it feels like they're not talking to the fan base, which is the people that they should be talking to.
Yeah, I mean, would I have preferred to have that one-on-one instead of CJ? Of course. I mean, but it didn't work out that way.
You should have. And I'm not blaming you. I'm saying, like, can't like, CJ's phenomenal and he did a good job with this, but CJ would not understand this or understand the fans' perspective the way that you would.
Yeah, I mean, then we just wait and see what happens next. I mean, let's just see what happens. I mean, we'll just have to go from here. I mean, what do you think about Bettman being here? What's that going to do? Or what's his message going to be?
Well, I mean, I think he's coming in to say the same thing. And I think that they're like, in the end, the issue here, as I see it, is like, people know that you need to fill the building or they're going to leave. Yeah, people know that. And I mean, there's still other ways to go here. Like, Mark Chipman may have to go and say, okay, well, we just can't. Hey, we'd love to compete for a cup, but you know what we're going to have to do? We're going to have to sell Connor Hellebuck now, right? Because we can't afford his salary, and we could get some money from another team. We could do all this kind of stuff. Like, there's places to go. It's just not a place they'd want to go. And credit to Mark Chipman. Mark Chipman is out there saying, if you want to have this competitive team that we've put together, this is what it's going to take. And he's laying it out there and he's saying that. And I get that. But the commissioner coming in and telling you that this is not going to work and that you need to show up, and the owner coming out and telling you that this isn't going to work and you need to show up, is only part of what's going to solve this. But what is really going to solve this is a business finding out what they need to do to better serve their customers, and then properly serving those customers and making them happy again. That's the solution to this. So to me, if it's constantly coming down to being like, and I don't want to call it scare tactics, but if it's constantly saying and reminding people, if you don't get in the building, there's going to be problems, I think another tack to take is like, hey, you should come in this building, because when you do, it's going to be amazing. We're going to make an amazing game day experience. This team's still going to be good. We are going to give you reason time and time again that when you come in this building, you're going to say, I'm going to be back. In fact, next year I'm buying season tickets. That's as much a piece of the puzzle here. And I know he's been calling people, which some people were saying that's desperate. That's ridiculous. Don't ever say that. Mark Chipman calling and connecting with fans is brilliant. It's a smart idea. He should keep doing that. They should have a list of people who used to be in that building, and he should make a call to as many of those people as they can, because that shows that he cares. That shows that he's invested. I think that that's brilliant. So I think that work is being done, but I get my back up a little bit, Ken, when at the national level, there's a conversation where it sounds like a team's got to say, fans, you got to get back into the building. It's not directly incumbent for the fans to just fill the seats and keep this team going. There's also, that's part of it, but there's also a part of this that is the ownership and the team itself making sure that fans walk away from this feeling like they've got value, because they jam-packed your building for over a decade in a time where the owner has admitted they didn't do a very good job of serving those fans.
Yeah, and I mean, Sean, the other part of the conversation, they realize the model doesn't work. The model has to have corporate support. So I don't think they're pointing at the individual season ticket holder and saying, why aren't you here? Yes, single game tickets are important, but this is more about getting that 9,500 to 13,000 by getting the support from the business community. Now, like you said, it's about showing value to them also. That was probably going to accomplish that,
sure.
right? So
for sure. Business partnerships have to work, right? Like hey, I'll talk about a great move. I think, and we know this because of TransCanada Brewing Company, but I go now, and if I'm going to a game, I can go get myself a TransCanada brewery or a blueberry. That's great news. There was a time, and it was a news story, and I know some people were frustrated when they talked about their craft beer corner, and all their craft beer came out of, Stanley Park or whatever, and
BC,
and people were frustrated by that. Why? Because we've got a great craft beer community here. So if you're going to listen, we know that the TCB people they hand out Jets tickets. They give us Jets tickets to hand out. They want to support the Winnipeg Jets. So I'll say this. I'm glad the Winnipeg Jets are in a place where they're showing support to TransCanada Brewing Company by showing off and showcasing their product at their games so that people can try their great stuff. I love that idea, and I love the reciprocation that you get from TCB, and I don't want to speak for them. I'm just saying from the outside, I see one business entity working with another business entity to make it so that it's beneficial for both of them. And I think those are the kind of solutions that get you to where you want to be with the corporate side of things as well. So I think they're moving in the right direction. I don't, because Ken, we get these calls. I get this call from Toronto. I get this call from people being like, well, what's going on here? Are they going to lose the team? Are the fans doing this? I don't like the finger pointing from around the North America, where people are, look, I saw someone today from Atlanta saying the team should be moved back to Atlanta where they appreciate the team and all that kind of stuff. Give me a break. Winnipeggers are diehard hockey fans. Something has been lost in translation. It will get back here to it. Winnipeg Jets fans, hockey fans, there is nothing wrong with you. You are some of the best fans in the entire hockey world. Don't ever let anyone tell you you're not. Figure this out. Everyone get back into that building, and we'll get back to sellouts and the kind of building that we know this can be. It's got to be both sides solving this, though. It can't just be the people
for sure.
who just have to get back into the seats.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's what I said. This is going to be, we'll be talking about this on Tuesday again once we hear more from the commissioner, see what his tone is like. I mean, I think it's important to remember that Winnipeg is one of the few places where Gary Bettman is still cheered for the most part. This is a guy who helped bring the team back, and I've seen lots of suggestions that Bettman doesn't want the Jets here. I'm going to tell you right now, Sean, and you already know this. If Gary Bettman didn't want the Jets in Winnipeg, they wouldn't have brought them here in 2011. But at the same time, they sort of laid out what needs to happen in order for them to maintain their status. So, it's going to be very interesting here. I'm very curious to see where it goes. But, I mean, at the same time, there's lots of, like you said, the work is kind of just beginning. And there's a lot of story left to be told here.
Yeah, no doubt. Okay, we got to get rolling here. You got a got you covered play of the game for our Johnston group, the Kenny and Renny OGs.
Yeah, my got you covered is Connor Hellebuck for somehow getting up after being smoked by Taylor Radish I understand it was accidental, but at the same time, you have to be aware of where you're. You can't just skate 100 miles an hour in front of the crease and clip the goalie because you're not looking. That's just not great. Shouldn't be happening. I would also say, Sean, too, I think this is a miss by the concussion spotter. I understand Rob Millette was on the ice and went through a lot of the tests with Connor Hellebuck, but if you're not taking a guy out to send him to the quiet room in that situation, what other situation would you send him there in? Right? I mean, to me, that was a little bit silly, but Hellebuck was obviously fine. And as it turns out, he was tested on a breakaway, a minute and a half later. Made a great save with this pad. And I still don't know how how is that not a penalty shot for Jason Dickinson? That's a complete swing and a miss there. It was a clear-cut breakaway, and the guy slashed his stick. So, anyways, that's a long-winded way of saying Connor Hellebuck had his teammates covered on another night where they weren't at their best, right? I mean,
agreed. Nailed it, Ken. That is a great pick for the Johnston Group. Got you covered. Play of the game. And hey, do you run a small business in Canada? Look to Canada's #1 employee benefits plan, Chambers Plan, to give you a competitive edge. Chambers Plan is the simple, stable, smart choice for over 30,000 businesses countrywide. Visit chamberplan.ca to learn more. Okay, you got. Is it pretty obvious? Are we gonna say Connor Hellebuck touched it and gave it the keg save of the game? I'm gonna say it, regardless of whether he touched it or not. He stopped it with his mind, and that empty net with
Good
Connor Hellebuck rolling back and throwing the hands up backwards, for me, is the keg save of the game. Ken, you going with that too?
Yeah, I don't want to argue with you. I know better than that on a Friday night.
There we go. Yeah, we got places to be and things to do. Hey, it doesn't really matter if Ken wants to argue. Even if I'm right, that doesn't matter. What matters is what you think the keg save of the game is, because if you do share with us your hashtag the keg save of the game, you're automatically entered to win a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg. Each location finer than the last. And that would mean that Greg Johnson, you are our guy. If you direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds, give me your full name and your email, you will have a $50 gift certificate sent to you by the keg, usable at any of their 3 locations here in the city of Winnipeg. Each location finer than the last. And Ken,
honorable mention to Peter Mrazek, because your right pad save off Gabriel Velarde after the sweet head fake going to the backhand was absolutely fantastic. My lamplighter is the second goal by Nik Ehlers. End-to-end special, passed it off the boards to himself, cuts to the middle, doesn't get his head taken off, and beats Mrazek with an absolute beauty. Yes, the first one is pretty because there's absolutely no space for him to find except for the length of the puck that somehow snuck in. And sure, Kyle Connor has a nice overtime winner that goes off the skate of Nick Foligno, thanks to a great play by Josh Morrissey. But to me, the absolute most beautiful goal of the game was scored by Ehlers at a time where this is what Nikolai Ehlers looks like with confidence. And he hasn't been playing with that level of confidence, for the last several weeks. So that was a big development for the Jets. That's why I'm choosing it as my lamplighter.
Yeah, I'll go with the first goal just because it's one of those ones and Ken, you'll have experienced this on the ice. Every once in a while, you get those guys that we all played hockey at a level where there was a lot of really good hockey players out there. And then every once in a while, there's those guys that would step on the ice that you're like, oh God, he's heads and shoulders above everybody else out there. And I remember there was a guy I played hockey with, and he had one of these moments where he was skating down the right boards, and he was right by the hash marks, and he looked up and you could just see the recognition in his posture, and he saw that the goalie was not necessarily expecting the shot because the goalie just thought that he had the perfect angle and it was covered, but there was a little triangle right over in the corner of the net, right in his shoulder, and the guy just looked up and he just went whoop, and he threw it right in that spot right there. So I know what it looks like live on the ice for something like that to happen. It blows your mind that a guy
sounds like a Lloyd Pelche special right there.
No? It wasn't Lloyd. Lloyd just walked up at the but actually Lloyd had similar ones to that as well. But anyways, that is what that reminded me of. And what I liked about it was at the senior hockey level, which is where I saw that, it was one of those things where everyone on the ice was just like, you got to be kidding me. Give me a break. Well, it's nice to see that it translates to the NHL level because everyone on the ice thought the exact same thing. He found a spot. Mrazek wasn't expecting anything because he thought he had it perfectly covered off. And this wasn't even one of those ear hole goals, right? You see guys are commonly trying the ear hole thing now. It wasn't even that. It was just this crazy angled shot. He saw a little bit of daylight. He put it there. Great stuff for Nik Ehlers. Hey, if you're going to break out of a 10-game no goal streak, you might as well do it in style. He did it in style. That carried him through the rest of the game, and he's the reason the Winnipeg Jets were able to get to overtime and find 2 points here on this night. That's my lamplighter of the game. Love to hear from you what yours is, because it doesn't matter what we think, it matters what you think, because if you share with us your hashtag lamplighter of the game, you are automatically entered to win a Frosty Delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale, brought to you by our friends at TransCanada Brewing Company. If you can't wait for Kenny and Renny to gift you your 8-pack, head on down to TransCanada Brewing Company at 1290 Kenniston Boulevard. Yes, Boulevard, I believe.
Yes.
Anyway, that's where we will have our final Kenny and Renny show of the year, April 6th. It's going to be a great
Final live show.
Final live show. Do us a favor and don't make us wait till the end like you did this last time. If you're going to go, get out there and get tickets now. Just look up Kenny and Renny on Eventbrite April 6th, and that will take you to where you need to find tickets. The winner of our lamplighter from the last show, listen, if you ever needed proof that handing out this award has nothing to do with good takes, that you can have terrible takes and still win this award, hey, this is the proof you were looking for, because T. Will, ladies and gentlemen, has walked away with the Lamplighter Award. So you know what to do, T. Will. Direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your full name, which I know. I still can threaten to share it on the show. I'll do it if you cross that line. But T. Will, full name, email, send that to me, and I will send you a voucher for a Frosty Delicious 8-pack. Lamplighter Amber Ale, brought to you by our friends at TransCanada Brewing Company, the nectar of the gods, as T. Will is about to find out. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I really appreciate you sticking around through the 3 iterations of the show here tonight. It's kind of like one of those things. We just wanted to see how
hat trick, full on hat trick. You got the hat trick that Nik Ehlers didn't finish tonight.
There you go. We wanted to see what you'd put up with to stick around, and it's like you did it. Good job for you for sticking it out, everybody. Wanted to say thank you to you. Thank you to Ken, who always rocks it. And I wanted to say thank you to our sponsors. If you appreciate the conversation happening in this space, please appreciate our sponsors who fight to keep the conversation going in this space. For us, that's Pristine Roofing, Sweet Lou Furlan, Cambrian Credit Union, Vittorio Rossi, the Kenny and Renny OGs in the Johnson Group, the Keg, and of course, TransCanada Brewing Company. Thank you to all of them. Thank you to you. Next game is when, Ken?
Sunday at 5 p.m. against the Arizona Coyotes.
A 5-er against the Arizona Coyotes. Going to be a good one, folks. Are they going for the season sweep in that one? I think it's their last game against them.
It is their last game.
I'm going to say it regardless. Anyway, thank you, everybody. Great to see you. We will see you all on Sunday.